Devin Burns stood at attention on the bridge of the UHW Vigilant, his eyes fixed on the vast expanse of space visible through the frigate's viewscreen. The stars seemed colder somehow, as if they too sensed the weight of the moment. In just a few hours, the largest fleet in human history would depart on a mission over a century in the making. As he waited for the final launch orders, Devin's mind drifted to the story he'd heard countless times throughout his life, the tale of his great-great-grandfather, Thomas Burns. It was a story etched into the collective memory of his family, passed down through generations like a sacred text. Thomas had been a colonist on New Eden, one of humanity's first extrasolar settlements. He was a farmer, a father of three, with dreams as vast as the alien skies above him. That was before the Normers came. The attack had been swift and merciless. The Normer ships descended from the heavens, their energy weapons carving swaths of destruction across the fledgling colony. Thomas, along with thousands of others, had died defending their new home against an enemy they'd never even heard of before that day. Devin clenched his fist, feeling the familiar surge of anger and grief that always accompanied the memory. He'd never known Thomas, never seen New Eden, but the pain of that loss had been a constant companion throughout his life. Captain Burns' voice cut through his thoughts. Fleet-wide transmission incoming. Devin straightened, pushing the memories aside. On screen he ordered, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. The view screen flickered, and the stern face of Fleet Admiral Fisher appeared. All ships, prepare for departure. Today we carry the hopes and the vengeance of generations. May our ancestors guide our hands. As the transmission ended, a flurry of activity erupted on the bridge. Devin moved to his command chair, keying in the final launch sequences. Around the Vigilant, hundreds of other ships from nimble frigates to massive dreadnoughts came to life, their engines glowing with barely contained power. Devin allowed himself one last moment of reflection. He thought of his father and his father before him, all the way back to Thomas, each of them living with the knowledge that one day humanity would have its reckoning. "Helm, take us out," Devin commanded, his voice carrying the weight of 100 years of waiting. "It's time we collected on an old debt." The Vigilant surged forward, joining the vast armada as it moved into formation. Ahead lay the Normer homeworld and the justice that had eluded humanity for so long. Devin Burns, great-great-grandson of a murdered colonist, felt the hand of history on his shoulder. The stars blurred as the fleet jumped to FTL, carrying with it the accumulated rage and sorrow of generations. The day of reckoning had finally arrived. As the UHW Vigilant hurtled through hyperspace, Devin Burns found himself lost in thought. The gentle hum of the ship's engines seemed to sync with the rhythm of human history, each pulse a reminder of the century-long journey that had led to this moment. He pulled up a holo display, cycling through images that every schoolchild knew by heart. The aftermath of the Normer attack on New Eden, smoking craters where cities once stood, fields of crops reduced to ash. Then came the faces of the survivors, hollow-eyed and grieving, testifying before the newly formed United Human Worlds Council. Never again, they had said, and humanity had listened. The next image showed President Jonathan Meadows, the first of the military leaders to take control. His inaugural speech played softly through the display. "From this day forward, every resource, every mind, every ounce of human ingenuity will be devoted to one purpose, ensuring that we are never caught unprepared again. The Normers believe they have broken us. They are wrong. They have forged us." Devin remembered learning about the sweeping changes that followed. The complete restructuring of human society around military preparedness, the mandatory service years, the massive shipyards that sprouted up across the solar system, churning out vessels of war. He swiped to another image, the breakthrough. Dr. Eliana Vega standing before a monstrous device, her face a mix of triumph and trepidation. The quantum cascade weapon, capable of tearing apart the very fabric of space-time. A weapon designed for one purpose: the complete annihilation of the Normer homeworld. The final image was the most recent current President Alexander Graves boarding the flagship of the fleet, his expression grim and determined. The caption below read, "Humanity will always have its justice, no matter what." Devin closed the holo display, his jaw set. Every president since the attack had been a military leader, each one carrying forward the torch of vengeance, building upon the work of their predecessors. And now, after 100 years of relentless preparation, that vengeance was at hand. A chime from his console drew Devon's attention. They were approaching the first waypoint. Soon, they would make the final jump to normal space. As he began the preparations for the next phase of their journey, Devon couldn't help but wonder. What would humanity become after this? For a century, they had defined themselves by this single purpose. Every advance, every discovery, every child born, all of it had been in service of this moment. The ship's AI interrupted his musings. "Captain Burns, we are ready to proceed on your command." Devon took a deep breath, pushing aside his doubts. He was a product of this century of preparation, just as much as the ship he commanded or the weapons they carried. There would be time for reflection later. For now, there was only the mission. "Proceed," he ordered, his voice steady. The stars outside blurred once more as the Vigilant, along with the rest of the massive human fleet, jumped deeper into enemy territory. The vast human fleet hung in space, a silent armada poised on the edge of normal territory. On the bridge of the HFY Vigilant, Captain Devon Burns stood at attention, his eyes fixed on the main view screen. The image flickered to life, revealing the stern visage of President Alexander Graves aboard the fleet's flagship, the HFY Nemesis. Graves' voice rang out, broadcast simultaneously to every ship in the fleet. "Men and women of the United Human Worlds, the hour of our reckoning has come." Devon felt a shiver run down his spine. This was the moment a century in the making. 103 years ago, Graves continued, his voice laden with emotion, the Normers struck without provocation or mercy. They believed they had broken us, that we would fade into history as another extinct species. They were wrong. The president's eyes seemed to burn with an inner fire. Humanity does not forget. Humanity does not forgive. And above all, humanity does not yield. We have waited, we have prepared, and now we will have our justice. Devon glanced around the bridge. Every member of his crew stood transfixed, their faces a mixture of determination and barely contained rage. "Some may question the righteousness of our cause," Graves said, his tone growing solemn. "They may ask if a century is too long to hold on to our anger, if we should have sought reconciliation instead of retribution. To them, I say this: the blood of our ancestors cries out for justice. The ruins of New Eden demand it. We are not merely soldiers on a mission of vengeance. We are the instrument of humanity's will, forged over 100 years of unwavering purpose." The president's voice rose to a crescendo. "Today we strike not just for those we lost, but for every human who has lived under the shadow of that loss. We strike for the future we were denied, and for the future we will now claim. The Normers sowed the wind, and now they shall reap the whirlwind." A roar of approval echoed through the ship's corridors. On the bridge, Devon saw his crew members clench their fists, some wiping away tears. "I stand before you not just as your president, but as your commander-in-chief," Graves declared. "I will lead this assault personally to ensure that our vengeance is complete and absolute. Let it be known throughout the galaxy, humanity will always have its justice, no matter what." The president's eyes seemed to lock with Devon's through the screen. For New Eden. For Earth. For humanity. Forward to victory. The transmission ended, leaving a moment of profound silence on the bridge. Devon took a deep breath, steadying himself. He turned to his crew, seeing in their eyes the same mix of emotions that roiled within him: anticipation, determination, and a hint of trepidation at the enormity of what they were about to do. "You heard the president," Devon said, his voice calm but filled with resolve. "Prepare for the final jump. Weapons systems on standby. Today we fulfill the promise made by our ancestors." As the crew sprang into action, Devon returned his gaze to the view screen. The stars beyond seemed to pulse with potential energy, as if the universe itself held its breath in anticipation of the coming storm. In moments, they would make the jump to the Normer homeworld. A century of waiting was about to end in fire and retribution. Devin Burns, descendant of a murdered colonist, captain in the fleet of Vengeance, felt the weight of history settle upon his shoulders. The vast human armada rippled with energy as countless ships engaged their faster-than-light drives simultaneously. On the bridge of the HFY Vigilant, Captain Devin Burns felt a familiar lurch in his stomach as space-time warped around them. FTL jump successful, Captain, his navigator reported. We're on course for the Normer home system. Devin nodded, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. The human fleet moved as one, a spearhead of vengeance piercing the dark between stars. Years of drills and simulations had honed them into a single deadly organism. All ships reporting in, sir, the communications officer announced. Fleet cohesion at 100%. For hours, they traveled in tense silence, each crew member acutely aware of the history they were making. Devin used the time to review the battle plans one last time, though he had long since memorized every detail. A sudden alarm shattered the quiet. Multiple contacts, the sensor officer called out. Normer signatures, a patrol group. They're on an intercept course. Devin's training kicked in instantly. Battle stations. All hands prepare for combat. Weapons, stand by on my mark. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as the crew sprang into action. On the main view screen, Devin watched as a small group of Normer ships approached. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but Devin knew better than to underestimate them. Incoming transmission from the flagship, the comms officer reported. President Graves' voice filled the bridge, calm and authoritative. All ships engage at will. Show them the price of their arrogance. You heard the president, Devin said, his voice steady. Fire at will. The space between the fleets lit up with weapons fire. Beams of coherent light and streams of plasma crisscrossed the void. The Normer ships, caught off guard by the sudden appearance of such a massive human fleet, fought valiantly but were quickly overwhelmed. Devin watched as the Vigilant's weapons found their mark, tearing through the hull of a Normer cruiser. The enemy ship erupted in a silent explosion, scattering debris across the battlefield. In minutes, it was over. The Normer patrol group had been annihilated, with only minor damage to a few human ships. As the fleet regrouped and continued its advance, Devin felt a complex mix of emotions. Pride in his crew's performance, satisfaction at striking the first blow against humanity's ancient enemy, but also a sobering realization of the destruction they had just wrought and the far greater destruction yet to come. Captain, his XO said softly, that was easier than expected. Devin nodded grimly. A century of preparation against an enemy that thought us beaten. But don't get complacent. This was just a patrol. The real battle is yet to come. As if to underscore his words, a priority message flashed across his console. Devin read it quickly, his expression hardening. All hands, listen up, he announced. Long-range sensors have detected a massive energy spike in the Normer home system. Intelligence believes they're activating some kind of planetary defense grid. He paused, letting the information sink in. It seems the Normers aren't as unprepared as we hoped, but it changes nothing. We've trained for this. We're ready for this. Devin looked around the bridge, meeting the eyes of each crew member. He saw determination there and resolve. A century of waiting, of preparing, had led to this moment. Set course for the Normer homeworld, he ordered. Whatever defenses they have, we'll breach them. Whatever weapons they possess, we'll overcome them. The day of reckoning is here, and nothing will stand in our way. The Vigilant surged forward, taking its place in the massive human formation. Ahead lay the heart of Normer civilization and the culmination of humanity's century-long quest for vengeance. The real battle was about to begin. The vast human armada emerged from its final FTL jump, the Normer home system sprawling before them. On the bridge of the HFY Vigilant, Captain Devin Burns felt his breath catch in his throat. There it was, the Normer homeworld, a blue-green orb suspended in the void, not unlike Earth itself. Multiple contacts, sir, his sensor officer called out. Normer defense fleet forming up. They're everywhere. Devin's eyes darted across the tactical display. Thousands of Normer ships swarmed around their homeworld, a last desperate line of defense against humanity's vengeance. Incoming transmission from the flagship, the comms officer announced. President Graves' face appeared on the main view screen, his expression grim but determined. All ships, this is the moment we've prepared for. Commence Operation Nemesis. Weapons free. Devon took a deep breath. You heard the president. All batteries, open fire. Launch fighters. Let's remind the Normers why they should have finished the job a century ago. The space between the fleets erupted in a dazzling, deadly light show. Energy beams lanced across the void, while swarms of missiles and fighter craft darted between capital ships. The Normers fought with the desperation of a species facing extinction, but the humans pressed forward, their century of preparation evident in every maneuver, every precisely aimed shot. As the battle raged, Devon received a priority alert. Sir, his XO reported the flagship is signaling. It's time. Devon nodded solemnly. Patch me into the fleet-wide channel. Once connected, he spoke clearly and firmly. All ships, this is Captain Burns. Omega Protocol is now in effect. I repeat, Omega Protocol is in effect. All ships withdraw to minimum safe distance. Across the battlefield, human ships began to disengage, pulling back in a carefully choreographed maneuver. The Normers, caught off guard by this sudden retreat, hesitated. On the fringes of the system, a small group of heavily modified ships moved into position. These were the culmination of 100 years of research and development, the quantum cascade weapons platforms. QC platforms in position, a voice confirmed over the comm. Awaiting final authorization. There was a moment of tense silence before President Graves' voice rang out. For New Eden. For Earth. For humanity. Execute. Devon watched on the tactical display as the QC platforms powered up. Streams of exotic particles shot forth, converging on the Normer homeworld. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then reality itself seemed to scream. The fabric of space-time around the planet began to warp and tear. Gravitational forces went haywire, ripping apart Normer ships caught too close. The planet's atmosphere ignited, turning the once blue-green orb into a roiling ball of fire. On the Vigilance bridge, the crew watched in stunned silence as a century of pent-up vengeance was unleashed in a single, cataclysmic moment. My God, someone whispered. Devon felt a complex mix of emotions wash over him. Satisfaction at seeing humanity's vengeance finally realized. Horror at the scale of destruction they had wrought. And underneath it all, a gnawing question, what have we become? As the quantum cascade effect began to subside, leaving behind a shattered, lifeless husk where the Normer homeworld had been, Devon's tactical officer spoke up. Sir, we're detecting multiple FTL signatures. It looks like it's the rest of the Normer fleet. They're coming from all directions. Devon straightened, pushing aside his conflicting emotions. There would be time for reflection later. Now, there was a battle to finish. All hands, battle stations, he ordered, his voice steady. The Normers have come home to die. Let's oblige them. As the human fleet reformed to face this new threat, Devon couldn't help but wonder, when the dust settled, when the last Normer ship was destroyed, what would be left of humanity's soul? The bridge of the UHW Vigilant was eerily quiet. Captain Devon Burns stood motionless, his eyes fixed on the main view screen. Where once the Normer homeworld had hung in space, there was now only a slowly expanding cloud of debris, backlit by the system's sun. Status report, Devon said, his voice barely above a whisper. His XO cleared her throat before responding. The quantum cascade effect has dissipated, sir. The Normer homeworld it's gone. Completely. Long-range scans show no signs of survivors on any of the system's other bodies. Devon nodded slowly, trying to process the magnitude of what they had just done. A century of preparation, of single-minded focus, had culminated in this moment. An entire world gone. Billions of lives extinguished in an instant. Sir, the communications officer interrupted. We're receiving a fleet-wide transmission from the president. On screen, Devon ordered, straightening his posture. President Graves appeared, his face a mask of grim satisfaction. Men and women of the United Human Worlds, we have struck a blow for justice this day. The Normer homeworld is no more. Their ability to threaten humanity has been forever broken. But our task is not yet complete. Their reinforcements approach. And we must be ready. Steel yourselves for the final battle. Humanity's vengeance will be absolute. As the transmission ended, Devon found himself lost in thought. He'd always imagined this moment would feel different. Triumph, perhaps, or a sense of justice fulfilled. Instead, he felt hollow. Captain, his XO said softly, "The crew is awaiting your orders." Devon blinked, snapping back to the present. "Right. Tactical, what's the status of the incoming Normer fleet?" "Multiple groups approaching from various vectors, sir. ATA varies, but the first wave will be here within the hour." Devon nodded, his training taking over. "All right, let's get to work. Coordinate with the rest of the fleet to establish a defensive perimeter. I want our fighters refueled and rearmed ASAP, and get damage control teams to shore up any weak spots from the earlier engagement." As his crew sprang into action, Devon's eyes were drawn back to the view screen. The debris field that was once the Normer homeworld seemed to mock him. This was what a century of hatred had wrought. This was the price of vengeance. He thought of his great-great-grandfather, of New Eden, of all the stories he'd grown up with. Had this been what they wanted? Total annihilation? Or had humanity, in its relentless pursuit of revenge, become something else entirely? Alert from his console snapped Devon out of his reverie. The first wave of Normer ships would be arriving soon. Whatever doubts he had, whatever moral quandaries plagued him, they would have to wait. There was still a battle to be fought. "All hands." Devon announced, his voice steady despite the turmoil within, "Prepare for combat. The Normers are coming, and they'll be fighting with nothing left to lose. Stay sharp, watch each other's backs, and remember your training. We've waited a century for this day. Let's finish what we started." As the crew responded with a chorus of affirmations, Devon couldn't help but wonder when this was all over. When the last Normer ship was destroyed and humanity's vengeance was complete, what then? What would they become in the aftermath of this all-consuming quest? The tactical display lit up with new contacts. The Normer reinforcements had arrived. "All batteries, stand by," Devon ordered, pushing his doubts aside. "Here they come." The final battle for humanity's revenge was about to begin. The void erupted in a cacophony of light and destruction as the Normer reinforcements clashed with the human fleet. Captain Devon Burns gripped the arms of his command chair, his eyes darting between tactical displays and the main view screen of the UHW Vigilant. Evasive maneuvers, he shouted as a Normer cruiser bore down on them, energy weapons blazing. The Vigilant lurched, narrowly avoiding the brunt of the attack. "Return fire, all batteries," Devon ordered. The ship shuddered as it unleashed its own barrage, tearing through the Normer cruiser's shields and ripping into its hull. All around them, the battle raged. Human and Normer ships danced a deadly waltz, exchanging fire in a dizzying display of advanced weaponry. But there was a desperation to the Normers' actions now, a reckless fury born of grief, and the knowledge that they had nothing left to lose. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, "the Normers are pressing hard on our flank. They're trying to break through to the quantum cascade platforms." Devon's mind raced. The QC weapons were spent, but the Normers didn't know that. They must think we're preparing another strike. "Redirect Squadron Beta to reinforce that sector," he commanded, "and get me aligned to Fleet Command." Moments later, President Graves' face appeared on a secondary screen. "Report, Captain Burns." "Mr. President, the Normers are making a push for the QC platforms. I believe they think we're preparing another strike. We could use this to our advantage." Graves nodded, a grim smile on his face. "Well reasoned, Captain. I'll coordinate with Admiral Fisher. Keep them focused on those platforms. Let them throw everything they have at a threat that no longer exists." As the battle wore on, Devon watched the Normer fleet slowly fall into the trap. More and more of their ships peeled away from the main engagement, desperately trying to reach the QC platforms before they could fire again. Now Graves' voice boomed across the fleet-wide channel. All ships, execute maneuver Omega-3. The human fleet moved with practiced precision, suddenly shifting formation to encircle the now exposed Normer forces. Caught off guard and out of position, the Normers found themselves in a killing field. All batteries, fire at will, Devon ordered, and the Vigilant added its firepower to the devastating barrage. Normer ships exploded in silent bursts of light and debris. Those that survived the initial onslaught tried to regroup, but it was too late. The trap had sprung, and humanity's vengeance would not be denied. As the battle reached its crescendo, Devon felt a strange mix of emotions: pride in his crew's performance, exhilaration at their impending victory, but also a deep, gnawing sense of unease. This was at the culmination of a century of preparation and hatred. And what had it brought them? Sir, his XO reported, her voice tinged with awe, the Normer fleet. It's done. We're detecting no more active signatures. It's over. A hush fell over the bridge. Devon stood slowly, looking out at the debris-strewn battlefield. The remains of thousands of ships, both human and Normer, drifted silently in the void. In the distance, the shattered remnants of the Normer homeworld served as a grim reminder of the day's toll. Captain Burns' President Graves' voice cut through the silence. You and your crew have done humanity proud this day. The Normer threat is no more. We have our justice, at long last. Devon nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Around him, his crew began to cheer, the weight of 100 years finally lifting from their shoulders. But their celebration was short-lived. However, Graves continued, his tone suddenly cold and resolute. Our mission is not yet complete. Execute Directive Hellfire. Devon's blood ran cold. Sir? I don't understand. What is Directive Hellfire? But even as he spoke, Devon watched in horror as his ship's AI took control of the weapons systems. Across the fleet, specialized missiles began launching from every ship, streaking off into different directions. Mr. President, Devon said, struggling to keep his voice steady, what are those missiles? What's happening? Graves' face on the view screen was a mask of grim determination. Those, Captain, are planet busters. They're targeting every known Normer military world, colony, and outpost. We will ensure that humanity will be safe from the Normer threat forever. Devon felt the floor drop out from under him. But sir, the Normer homeworld is destroyed. Their fleet is in ruins. Surely this isn't necessary. Necessary, Graves' eyes flashed. This was always the plan, Captain. Vengeance for New Eden was just the beginning. With this, we'll secure human dominance in this sector for generations to come. As the implications of Graves' words sank in, Devon looked around his bridge. His crew stood frozen, shock and confusion evident on their faces. They had come seeking justice, but this was genocide. Sir, Devon said, his voice barely above a whisper, we can't do this. It's not right. Right, Graves scoffed. We're ensuring the survival of our species, Captain. History will thank us for having the courage to do what's necessary. As Devon watched helplessly, the Planet Buster missiles disappeared into FTL, bound for their unsuspecting targets. The war they'd prepared for over a century was over, but a new, darker chapter was just beginning. Congratulations, Captain Burns, Graves said, his voice devoid of warmth. You've just witnessed the dawn of human galactic supremacy. The transmission cut off, leaving Devon and his crew in stunned silence. The cheers of victory had long since faded, replaced by a heavy, oppressive quiet. Devon stared out at the battlefield, the debris of Normer ships suddenly taking on a new, horrifying significance. We have our vengeance, he thought bitterly. But at what cost? And what have we become? As the realization of their true mission sank in, Captain Devon Burns stood silent on the bridge of the Vigilant, the weight of unintended complicity in an atrocity settling heavily upon his shoulders. The day of reckoning had come and gone, but the real nightmare was just beginning. They had unwittingly taken part in what they all knew was the worst crime, the worst sin than anyone and anything could take part in. The burning Normer worlds would be a testament of what they had done. Captain Devon Burns stood motionless on the bridge of the UHW Vigilant, the revelation of Directive Hellfire still ringing in his ears. Around him, his crew remained frozen in shock, the weight of their unwitting participation in genocide settling heavily upon them. Sir Hizexo's voice, usually so confident, now trembled with uncertainty. What do we do now? Devon turned slowly, meeting the eyes of each crew member. He saw in them a reflection of his own turmoil, confusion, horror, and a dawning sense of guilt. I don't know, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. It was the hardest thing he'd ever had to say as a captain. The tactical officer's console suddenly lit up with incoming data. "Captain," she said, her voice hollow, "we're receiving confirmations. The planet busters. They're reaching their targets." Devon closed his eyes, trying to shut out the reality of what was happening. But he couldn't escape the images his mind conjured: normal worlds, perhaps still celebrating their victory over the human homeworld a century ago, suddenly and violently extinguished. "How many?" he asked, dreading the answer. 37 confirmed hits so far, sir. More still incoming. 37 worlds. Billions of lives. All gone in an instant, just like the normal homeworld. And they had been the instrument of this destruction. A choked sob from the communication station broke the tense silence. Devon turned to see the young officer, tears streaming down her face. "My family," she said between sobs. "They died on New Eden. I thought this would bring them justice. But this isn't justice. What have we done?" Her words seemed to break a dam. Suddenly, the bridge erupted in a cacophony of emotions. Some crew members argued vehemently, others wept openly, while a few sat in stunned silence. Enough. Devon's voice cut through the chaos. All eyes turned to him. "I know you're all struggling with what we've learned. Believe me, I am too. But right now, we need to focus. We need to think about what comes next." Sir Hizexo said, a note of desperation in her voice, "Surely we can't just let this happen. There must be something we can do." Devon nodded slowly. "You're right, we can't stand by and do nothing. But we also can't act rashly. President Graves and whoever else is behind this, they've been planning this for who knows how long. We need to be smart about this." He turned to his communications officer. "I need you to discreetly reach out to other ship captains. Find out who else might be having doubts about Directive Hellfire. But be careful we don't know who we can trust." "Aye, sir," she replied, wiping away her tears and setting to work with renewed purpose. "Exo, I want you to go through every byte of data we have on Directive Hellfire. Find out everything you can about these planet busters. There might be a way to stop the ones that haven't hit yet." As his crew set about their tasks, Devon turned back to the view screen. The debris field of the battle still floated silently, a grim reminder of the destruction they'd already wrought. "We came here seeking justice for a century-old wrong," he thought. "Instead, we've become the instruments of an atrocity beyond imagination." Devon Burns, descendant of a New Eden colonist, captain in the fleet of Vengeance, now found himself facing an enemy he never expected: his own government, his own people, blinded by hatred and the lust for power. The day of reckoning had come, but not in the way any of them had anticipated. As the weight of their complicity settled upon them, Devon and his crew faced a new mission to stop the very vengeance they had spent their lives preparing for. Captain Devon Burns hunched over the secure terminal in his quarters, eyes burning from hours of scrutinizing encrypted messages. It had been 3 days since the revelation of Directive Hellfire, and every moment since had been a delicate dance of gathering information and potential allies without arousing suspicion. A soft chime alerted him to a new message. It was from Captain Ray French of the UHW Intrepid, coded in the innocuous language they'd agreed upon. "Weather patterns unusual. Considering alternate cruise plans. Advice appreciated." Devon allowed himself a small smile. Another ally. He quickly composed a reply, suggesting a rendezvous to discuss travel options. A knock at his door startled him. "Enter," he called, closing the secure channel. His XO, Commander Yuki Tanaka, stepped in, her face drawn with fatigue. "Sir, I've completed the analysis of the Planet Buster telemetry." Devon gestured for her to continue. "It's not good, sir. The weapons are largely autonomous once launched. They have multiple redundancies and self-repair capabilities. Stopping them, she trailed off, shaking her head. Devon's jaw clenched. We have to find a way, Yuki. How many are still en route? At least a dozen, sir, headed for smaller Normer colonies and outposts. A dozen worlds. Millions more lives hanging in the balance. Devon felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. What about the ones that have already hit, he asked, dreading the answer. Yuki's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Total devastation, sir. The reports are, they're horrific. Entire ecosystems collapsing. Survivors, if there are any, won't last long without immediate aid. Devon stood, pacing the small confines of his quarters. And I bet Graves isn't sending any aid missions, is he? No, sir. Official channels are calling it a regrettable necessity and a final solution to the Normer threat. Devon's fist slammed into the bulkhead, the pain a welcome distraction from the churning in his gut. Final solution, he spat. Do they even hear themselves? Yuki watched him, concern etched on her face. Sir, what's our next move? Devon took a deep breath, centering himself. We need more allies, and we need them fast. Have you had any luck reaching Admiral Jiang? Yuki shook her head. No, sir. All attempts to contact him have been blocked. I'm starting to worry. That he might be in on it, Devon finished grimly. All right, keep trying, but be careful. We can't risk exposing ourselves too soon. A priority alert flashed on Devon's terminal. His blood ran cold as he read the message. Captain, he said, his voice tight, prepare the ship for immediate departure. Covertly. I want us ready to jump in 30 minutes. Yuki straightened, instantly alert. Sir. It's the UHW Dauntless. Captain Lowe just sent out a distress call, said something about refusing orders and being branded a traitor. Then the transmission cut off. Understanding dawned in Yuki's eyes. He refused to fire his planet busters. Devon nodded. And now he's paying the price. We're the closest ship that I know isn't fully on board with Hellfire. We have to help him. But Sir, Yuki said cautiously, if we do this, there's no going back. We'll be declaring ourselves against Graves and Hellfire openly. Devon met her gaze steadily. I know, but if we don't stand up now, who will? This might be our only chance to show others it's possible to resist. Yuki saluted sharply. Understood, sir. We'll be ready in 20. As she left to prepare the ship, Devon turned back to his terminal. He sent out a final, encrypted message to the small network of captains he'd managed to contact. The storm breaks. Dauntless in peril. Vigilant responds. Choose your heading wisely. With that done, he headed for the bridge. The next few hours would determine not just their fate, but potentially the course of human history. They had come to this star system seeking vengeance for humanity. Now they found themselves fighting to save its very soul. As the Vigilant prepared to jump into uncertainty, Devon Burns steeled himself for the battles to come. The war they had trained for was over. A new one, far more complex and morally fraught, was just beginning. The UHW Vigilant dropped out of FTL, claxons blaring as it entered a scene of chaos. Before them, the Dauntless listed heavily, scorch marks marring its hull. Two other ships, the destroyers Relentless and Inexorable, circled it like predators, weapons trained on their wounded prey. Status report, Devon barked, gripping the arms of his command chair. Dauntless has taken heavy damage, sir, his tactical officer reported. Life support is failing. The Relentless and Inexorable are charging weapons for another salvo. Devon's mind raced. They were outgunned, but he couldn't stand by and watch Lowe and his crew be massacred for doing the right thing. Hail the Relentless, he ordered. The view screen flickered to life, revealing the stern face of Captain Amelia Khoury. Burns, what are you doing here? This is a restricted operation. Devon met her gaze steadily. Stand down, Amelia. What you're doing is wrong, and you know it. Khoury's eyes narrowed. Wrong? We're following orders, Devon. Lowe is a traitor. Don't tell me you've gone soft too. It's not going soft to question immoral orders, Devon countered. Hellfire is genocide, plain and simple. We didn't sign up for this. Spare me your moralizing, Kuri spat. Last chance, Burns. Leave now, or you'll share Lowe's fate. The transmission cut off abruptly. Devon turned to his crew, seeing determination mixed with fear on their faces. Red alert, he commanded. Shields up, weapons hot. Prepare to engage. The bridge erupted into action as the Vigilant surged forward, placing itself between the Dauntless and its attackers. Sir, his comms officer called out. We're receiving a transmission from the Intrepid. Captain French says she's en route to assist. A glimmer of hope. Tell her to hurry, Devon replied grimly. The space around them lit up as the Relentless and Inexorable opened fire. The Vigilant shuddered under the assault, but its shields held. Return fire, Devon ordered. Target their weapons systems and get a tractor beam on the Dauntless. We're getting them out of here. The battle was fierce and chaotic. The Vigilant, designed for speed rather than heavy combat, darted between its opponents, its point defense systems working overtime to intercept incoming missiles. Hull breach on Deck 7, an ensign called out. Emergency force fields holding. Devon gritted his teeth. They couldn't keep this up for long. Status on the Dauntless. Tractor beam engaged, sir. We're pulling them clear, but their life support is critical. They've got minutes at most. Suddenly, new contacts appeared on the tactical display. Devon's heart sank, expecting reinforcements for the enemy. But then, sir, it's the Intrepid and the Defiant and Audacious. They're engaging the Relentless and Inexorable. With the arrival of their allies, the tide quickly turned. The Relentless, caught between the Intrepid and Audacious, soon went dark, its weapons disabled. The Inexorable, realizing it was outmatched, jumped to FTL, retreating. Status of the Dauntless, Devon demanded. Life support failing, sir. We need to evacuate them now. Devon nodded. Do it, and prepare sick bay for casualties. As the rescue operations began, Devon allowed himself a moment of relief. They'd won this skirmish, but he knew it was only the beginning. Hours later, with the Dauntless crew safely aboard and the ship limping along under tow, Devon met with the other captains via secure hologram. We've crossed the Rubicon, Captain French of the Intrepid said gravely. Graves will brand us all traitors now. Captain Lowe, his face pale but determined, spoke up. We did the right thing. We have to stop Hellfire, no matter the cost. Devon nodded. Agreed. But we're going to need help. There must be others in the fleet, in the government, who see Hellfire for what it is. And the Normers added, Captain Easy's of the Audacious. Those we haven't killed yet. We need to warn them, help them if we can. A heavy silence fell over the group as the enormity of their task sank in. They were now rebels, fighting against their own government, trying to save not just the Normers but the very soul of humanity. So Devon said, breaking the silence, where do we start? As the rebel captains began to plan, Devon couldn't help but reflect on the irony. They had come to this star system seeking vengeance for humanity. Now, they found themselves fighting to save humanity from its own darker impulses. The makeshift fleet of rebel ships hung in the shadow of a gas giant, using its magnetic field to mask their signatures. On the bridge of the Vigilant, now serving as the de facto command center for the resistance, Captain Devon Burns studied the latest intelligence reports with a furrowed brow. Sir, his XO, Commander Tanaka, approached with a data pad. We've compiled the responses from our broadcast. After their daring rescue of the Dauntless, Devon and his fellow rebel captains had taken a risk, sending out an encrypted message to the entire fleet, exposing the true nature of Directive Hellfire and calling for others to join their cause. How bad is it? Devon asked, bracing himself. Tanaka's expression was grim. It's mixed, sir. About 30% of the fleet has gone dark. We think they're considering their options. 20% have explicitly rejected our message, reaffirming their loyalty to Graves. The rest, well, they're staying quiet for now. Devon nodded slowly. It was better than he'd feared, but not as good as he'd hoped. And what about the Normer colonies? We've managed to warn several of them. Some are evacuating, others are preparing defenses. But sir, we've lost contact with at least 5 outposts in the last 24 hours. The weight of those lost lives settled heavily on Devon's shoulders. Every hour they delayed, more innocent people died. But rushing in without a plan would only get them all killed. A priority alert flashed on the main screen. Incoming transmission from the Intrepid, the comms officer announced. Captain Ray French's face appeared, her expression a mix of excitement and worry. Burns, we've got a situation. A Normer refugee ship just entered the system. They're requesting asylum. Devon's eyebrows shot up. Normers? Here? How did they find us? Apparently, they intercepted one of our encrypted broadcasts. Their ship is in bad shape, Devon. They've got wounded, and they're being pursued by a UHW destroyer. Devon's mind raced. This could be a trap, but if it wasn't. All right, send me their coordinates. We'll intercept. Have the Audacious and Defiant stay behind to guard our position. Within minutes, the Vigilant and Intrepid were en route. As they dropped out of FTL, Devon's heart clenched at the sight before them. The Normer ship was little more than a civilian transport, its hull scorched and breached in multiple places. Behind it, closing fast, was the UHW destroyer Implacable. Hail the Implacable, Devon ordered. The face that appeared on the screen made Devon's blood run cold. Admiral Wu, one of President Graves' most loyal supporters. Well, Wu sneered. If it isn't the traitor Burns. Stand aside, Captain. Those Normers are property of the UHW. Devon's jaw clenched. They're refugees, Admiral. Civilians. This slaughter has to stop. Wu's eyes narrowed. This is your last warning, Burns. Stand down or be destroyed with the rest of the Xeno filth. The transmission cut off. Devon turned to his crew, seeing the same determination in their eyes that he felt. Battle stations, he commanded. We're ending this here. What followed was one of the most intense battles of Devon's career. The Vigilant and Intrepid worked in perfect sync, their smaller size allowing them to outmaneuver the larger destroyer. But the Implacable was powerful, its weapons leaving scars across both rebel ships. Just when it seemed they might be overwhelmed, a new ship dropped out of FTL. Devon's heart soared as he recognized the profile of the UHW Redemption, commanded by Admiral Jiang, the very admiral they'd been trying to contact. This is Admiral Jiang to all UHW ships, his voice boomed across all channels. Stand down immediately. By order of the Joint Chiefs, President Graves has been removed from office for crimes against humanity. Directive Hellfire is hereby rescinded. The battle ceased as suddenly as it had begun. As the Implacable stood down, Devon allowed himself a moment of hope, but he knew the war was far from over. In the hours that followed, as they tended to the Normer refugees and debriefed with Admiral Jiang, the full scope of what had transpired became clear. Graves' actions had split the UHW government and military. While Hellfire had been officially canceled, many still supported its goals. The road to peace, both within humanity and with the Normers, would be long and fraught with challenges. As Devon watched human medics treat Normer wounded, he reflected on the strange twists of fate that had brought them here. They had come seeking vengeance for a century-old wrong. Instead, they found themselves on the front lines of a fight for the very soul of humanity. 6 months had passed since the day Admiral Jiang's announcement changed everything. Captain Devon Burns stood at the viewport of the UHW Vigilant, watching as the ship approached New Harmony Station, a joint human-Normer outpost that symbolized the fragile peace between the two species. The station hung in space, a delicate construct of metal and light, representatives from both races working side by side to build something neither could have imagined just a year ago. Quite a sight, isn't it? Admiral Jiang's voice came from behind him. Devon turned and saluted. At ease, Captain Jiang said with a small smile. We've been through too much together to stand on ceremony. Devon relaxed, turning back to the viewport. It's hard to believe how far we've come, sir. And yet we still have so far to go. Jiang finished for him. I know. The aftermath of Directive Hellfire had been chaotic. With Graves removed from power, the truth of his actions had sent shockwaves through human society. Many were horrified by what had been done in their name, while others still clung to the ideology of human supremacy. The Normers, for their part, were understandably wary. The damage done by Hellfire was catastrophic. Entire worlds rendered uninhabitable, billions dead. Trust would not come easily. The peace talks start tomorrow, Jiang said, his voice solemn. You'll be there as part of the UHW delegation. Devon nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. Do you think we can really make this work, sir? After everything that's happened? Jiang was quiet for a moment. I think we have to try, Devon. The alternative is too grim to contemplate. As if on cue, a Normer ship glided into view, taking up position alongside the Vigilant. Devon recognized it as the Phoenix, commanded by Kel Vath, a Normer captain he'd come to know and respect over the past months. It won't be easy, Devon mused. There's so much pain on both sides. A century of hatred for us, the trauma of Hellfire for them. True, Jiang agreed. But remember, it was also humans who stopped Hellfire. You, your crew, the other rebel captains. You showed that humanity is capable of more than just vengeance. You gave us all a chance at redemption. Devon thought back to his great-great-grandfather, to New Eden, to all that had led him to this moment. I wonder what they would think of all this, he said softly. The ones we lost on New Eden. I'd like to think they'd be proud, Jiang replied. That they'd want us to build a better future, not cling to the pains of the past. A notification chimed, informing them that the Vigilant had been cleared to dock. As the ship maneuvered into position, Devon saw human and Normer crews working together on the station's exterior. You know, Devon said, a realization dawning. For the first time in my life, I'm not preparing for war. It's strange. Jiang clasped his shoulder. It's a new era, Devon. We've been given a rare second chance. What we do with it will define not just humanity, but our place in the galaxy. As they prepared to disembark, Devon took one last look at the station. New Harmony, a fitting name for this fragile new beginning. He thought of all they had been through, the century of preparation, the brutal execution of Hellfire, the rebellion that had saved both humanity's soul and countless Normer lives. It had been a long, painful journey. But now, as he watched humans and Normers working side by side, Devon felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. The war was over. The quest for vengeance had been transformed into a mission of reconciliation. And while the road ahead was uncertain, for the first time in a century, the future looked bright. Humanity had waited generations for justice. But perhaps, Devon reflected, true justice wasn't about vengeance at all. Perhaps it was about having the courage to break the cycle of hatred, to reach out to former enemies, and to build something new together. As the airlock cycled open, Devon straightened his uniform and stepped forward. The peace talks awaited, and with them, the chance to shape a new destiny not just for humanity, but for all sentient life in the galaxy. The day of reckoning had come and gone. The day of rebuilding had just begun. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you loved it. Please remember to subscribe if you did like it so you can see more videos like this. And please give us a like and a comment too. I'll see you in the next one.